Welcome back to the Edupedia world, and I am Abhinay Gupta. So today again we are continuing with the standards on auditing, and the standard under consideration is SA 300, Planning and Audit of the Financial Statements. Right? In the previous class we have already discussed a great deal about the planning. What is the importance of planning? How do you plan? What is the strategy? Right? What is the scope and objective of this essay? We have dealt with almost everything. There is very little remaining in this essay that we need to discuss and continue and cover up in this lecture. Right? So basically we are not discussing the questions in the lectures now. Right? The questions will be dealt separately. I will discuss with you in detail all the questions of the practice manual. Right? Because so that it helps you to memorize those questions. Reading through it and trying to mug up will not help. I will explain you all the questions of the practice manual, the past year questions, everything. They will be dealt in a class separately. Right? After we have completed all the essays, we will start with the lectures on the discussion of the questions. Right? So be rest assured, some of you who must be thinking that okay, we are not discussing the questions, how do we know what are the questions that needs to come? All you need to concentrate now is on the understanding and the remembrance of the content of the essay. Once we are done with the essay, we will definitely discuss the questions. Right? So what have we seen so far in the essay 300? We have seen the scope and objective, which is that this deals with the auditor's responsibility to plan the audit. Oh, it is TOO. Let me edit it. Yeah, done. So it deals with the auditor's responsibility to plan the audit. Right? Next you have that it is framed in context with the recurring audit we have already discussed. Right? And we know that there is a small portion of the initial audit engagement as well that will be separately identified, and we did not cover it in the previous lecture, but today we will cover that small para, the small two-liner that they have declared about the initial engagement as well. That is the additional requirement. Right? Then we have the requirements. First is the involvement of the key ET member, that is the engagement team member. Right? So why do we need to involve the key engagement team members? Because they have experience. Right? Those members have already performed the audit. They know the in and out. So when we discuss with them, that will help us. Right? Their participation in the discussion with the audit team will basically benefit us with their experience and the insight. That will benefit us to perform the audit or to plan the audit more effectively and efficiently. Right? Then we have the preliminary engagement activities. We reflected to SA 220 and 210. So basically it is the continuance of client relationship. We are not talking about the acceptance, only the continuance of client relationship. So whatever is the requirement that we'll have to fulfill. Right? Then we'll also see the ethical requirement, that is code of ethics, IOPCP, integrity, objectivity, professional competence and due care, confidentiality and professional behavior, and it also includes independence and professional skepticism. Right? Then we have the terms of engagement, the terms and condition that has been decided as per 210 in the letter of engagement. Right? Which may have been revised in this year or may be continuing roll forward from the previous year. Right? You already know the circumstances or the situations when this needs to be revised. We have dealt with it in detail in essay 210. Right? If you don't remember, please refer to that essay again. Right? Next we have the importance of planning. When you plan, it helps you to devote appropriate attention to the important areas. Right? Whatever the important areas are, since you have already identified it, please devote important attention to those areas in your planning. Give them some time. Right? Give them some resource. Right? Next you have identified and resolve the potential problem on timely basis. You know that these are the potential problems that may pop up during the audit, because in the previous year it did occur. So there is a possibility. So it is potential. Right? You don't know whether it is a problem or not, but it is potential. So you will have to be prepared with that. You cannot resolve it completely, but you will be prepared that yes, if it occurs, we are prepared. We will be able to resolve it in just a go. Right? So you will have to identify such problems and resolve them on timely basis. Then you have organize and manage the audit. The entire audit needs to be organized very well. Who is doing what, how to proceed, what are the procedures to be followed, everything. right? Then you will select the engagement team appropriately as per the need. Like when you have identified that yeah, there are two difficult areas, then you will have to take experts from your team for that, from your firm. So if there is anybody who is involved in some other engagement but he is not very much needed over there, someone else can substitute, but you don't have a substitute for that person in your engagement, you will call him from that engagement. No, I need you here. Look, we had a problem last year. He is the only person now who can resolve that. We don't want to get into trouble. Please send him to us. And you will send a replacement to that engagement. That is what happens in the firm, right? Then you have to ensure the coordination of the work. That the work is very well coordinated along with the management and the client personnel, not only your engagement team, right? Then you facilitate the direction and supervision of the entire engagement team. That is the importance of planning. When you plan, these are the things that happen, right? Now we come to the planning activities, where we have seen that there are two kinds of planning activities. One, first is establishing the audit strategy and then developing the plan according to that strategy. So when we are establishing the strategy, what we have seen is that the strategy should be able to set the scope, timing and the direction, right? And how do we build the strategy? First we'll see what is the character of the engagement. Accordingly we will have the strategy. You cannot have same strategy for the different kinds of audits or different kinds of engagement, like tax audit, statutory audit, group reporting, LR, limited review, that is, right? So you have to prepare different kinds of strategies for different kinds of engagement. Then what is your reporting objective? CARO, Companies Act, Form 3CD, what? Your accounting standards, what are you checking? Right? That will again form a basic part of your strategy. What is the, and then you will also have to direct the team's effort. Right? That is also very important. You will have to consider the factors that are very significant for directing the team's effort, and those factors needs to be dealt with. Right? Then you will also, your strategy will also be depending on the result of the preliminary engagement activity. If you find that there is a compromise with the ethical requirement, you will have to amend it. That no, there is a compromise with ethical requirement, serious issue, let us deal with it. If you think that yeah, there are certain terms in the engagement, right, that would actually restrict your scope, that would curb your independence, it's an issue. Right? If the scope says that okay, the management is relieved from this responsibility and it is shifted on you, that will be a problem. Right? So you will have to reflect to those things also. Then the nature, time and extent of the procedure. So you will have to ascertain what would be the nature, what would be the time, what would be the extent of the procedures which are necessary to be performed. Right? And then accordingly you will be developing the audit plan. Right? Clear with that fact? So that is all we had covered in the previous lecture. It was a good revision for you as well, right? Now we move ahead with the concepts that we have for the lecture today. First is developing the audit plan. Now, when you're developing the audit plan, it should include the description of the nature, time and extent of the risk assessment procedure at the financial statement level, right? So when we're talking about the risk assessment procedure, we are actually referring to essay 315, which is the next essay that we will be covering. Right? Over there you will understand in detail about the risk assessment procedures. So over here all you need to know is that you will have to give a description in your plan about the nature, time and extent of the procedures that you will be following. The procedure that you will be following to assess the risk. Right? Then you will also have to describe, you will also have to give a description of the nature, timing and extent of the procedures at the assertion level as well. Above we have seen the RAP at financial level, now at the assertions level as well. Now do you remember what is assertion level? We have already dealt with that factor earlier in the lectures. If somebody has missed it or if somebody do not remember it, I would repeat it. So assertion level is basically that level, or it is considered to be the transaction level, right? In the very beginning what happens is the client gives you the data. Either it is a dump from your ERP, or it is some document from the client, some reports from the client, right? So these data that the client provides you, right, and then ascertains, the client asserts that yeah, these data that I'm providing you are correct, it is relevant, right? You don't have to doubt on its validity. These are legitimate data that I'm giving it to you. Will you accept it? Oh wow, you're so good, you have given me the best data ever. Now my work is so easier. I will just document it and I'm done. No. You will apply professional skepticism over there. Right? You will doubt what the client has ascertained. And then you will have to perform your own procedures to check whether what the client was ascertaining was correct. So that level where the client comes up to you giving you some data with some ascertainment that yeah, these are correct, that level is known as assertion level, where they're ascertaining that yeah, it is correct, right? So assertion is a process, the nature, time and extent of the procedures at the assertion level. So when with that data, what procedures you use in order to be satisfied that they are correct and they are actually valid for you, right? Those procedures, we're talking about the nature, time and extent of those procedures, right? And then you also talk about those procedures that are very much required in order to comply with the standards on auditing. So you have to follow some certain specific procedures for those two. So your plan would actually include the procedures. Yeah, this procedure is what I would cover up. What would be the nature, what would be the time of application of that procedure, and to what extent will I apply such procedures, right? Procedure at your financial statement level, the risk assessment procedure, the procedure at your assertion level, and the procedure to comply with the standards on auditing. Clear with that? So now do you understand the difference between the strategy and the plan? The strategy was the base, right? The strategy was basically the grounds on which you are developing your plan. It is the direction, but it is not the road. The road is your plan. That yes, you have to work step by step on this road. But where are you leading? You are leading towards north. That north is your strategy. Agreed? Okay. And also remember that these are not rigid strategies or plans. These can be amended as and when you get some relevant data. When you get some relevant information and you consider it fit to yes, amend these strategies, then you will amend it. If you consider it fit to amend the procedures, to amend the timing or the extent or the nature of a procedure, you will amend those plans accordingly, right? Because it is not necessary that at the initiation, before going to the client, you have everything in mind and that is rigid and you perform it that way and everything goes well. No, things will change, situation will change, right? Circumstances will appear in front of you once you are at the field. So situation at the field are at times very much different than what you have already planned, what you have been thinking while you're sitting back in your office in your cubicle, right? Next is the documentation requirement. So what is the auditor supposed to document? So the auditor will document the strategy that he has developed. He will also document the plan that he has developed again, right? And if there is any significant change which is made during the audit of that engagement, right, to that strategy or to that plan, that change will have to be documented along with the reason for that change. Why are you changing it? Is it a valid reason? If yes, then you have to just document that yeah, I have amended this procedure in the strategy, in the planning, or I have amended this strategy, and that is because these are the situations that I have encountered after I have started the audit, right? Now we are coming down to the additional consideration in the initial audit engagement. So when you are actually undertaking the initial audit engagement, all the above procedures that we have talked about will be there, will be common, but there will be two additional procedures, two additional consideration in the initial engagement. Along with all these, two additional consideration, right? So what is the additional consideration? Number one is that you should perform those procedures which is required by SA 220, right, which is regarding the acceptance of the client relationship. So before accepting the client, you have to follow certain procedures that you'll have to see whether the preconditions exist. That is the basic thing, right? So if the preconditions exist, well and good. If they do not exist, then what? And if there is a limitation on your scope, then what? Then you will withdraw, then you will not accept the engagement, right? So these things have already been covered in essay 220, right? So this is only talking about that if it is an initial audit engagement, you will also have to cater to those procedures, right? And next, one more step is that now in an initial audit engagement, you were not the auditor in the previous year, so there was somebody else in your place. So now if you're taking up his client, you will have to communicate with him. Is there any significant issue you want me to know? Right? You will have to establish proper communication with the predecessor auditor, whether there has been any change in the auditor in compliance with the relevant ethical requirement. Right? So these are the only two additional considerations in the initial audit engagement. Apart from this, the entire essay talks about or deals with the provisions in reference to the recurring audit engagement. Next, we have the last and the very small part remaining, which is the factors to be considered in development of an overall plan. So when you're developing the plan, what are the factors that you will consider, right? So we have not listed down all the factors because that can vary, right? There are no specific or fixed factors that you need to consider, but still we'll discuss some of them. First thing is you will consider the scope. When I talk about considering the scope, is that you will consider the term of his engagement and the statutory responsibilities, right? That is the scope in the letter of engagement, right? In the scope also says that you will consider the applicable legal and statutory requirement, and you will also consider the pronouncements of ICAI, right? Then you will identify the significant areas, right? The significant audit areas, and then based on that significant audit area, you will develop a plan for that, right? You will then again identify the nature and timing of the report. What would be the nature of report that you are issuing? When do you want to issue that report? What are the other communications that you will be issuing, right? Then what are the accounting policies that you have adopted? So based on the accounting policies that the management has adopted, based on that you will again have to amend your policies. That okay, if this is the accounting policy, that means depreciation is going to be calculated not on straight line basis but on WDV method, right? So you will have to get into a detailed analysis of it, because WDV is not so easy, right? And if it is a huge manufacturing client, depreciation will be the key issue. So you will have to set your plans accordingly, right? Next, you have setting up the materiality. You will have to set the materiality for the audit procedures, right? Materiality is basically that level beyond which if there is any misstatement that would affect the decision of a shareholder or the stakeholders, right? What is materiality? Detail of it will be considering in essay 320, right? So far you don't need to discuss or know more about it. Then you have using the work of others. So you will have to plan accordingly. If you are using the work of an internal auditor, right? If you have an involvement of an other auditor in your entity, right? Or if you are working along with a joint auditor, then in all these circumstances you will have to consider the impact on your plan, right? And then etc., whatever are the other things, right? Like you will find the involvement of essay 265, the degree of reliance to be placed on the accounting system and internal control. If the internal control are strong, your procedures will be different. If the internal control is weak, your procedures will be different, right? So you can have a various number of factors on which your plan will depend. So there is no concrete list of factors on which your plan will depend, but yeah, I have given you some keywords based on which you can have a direction for thinking. The scope, the nature, time and extent of report, using the work of others, right? Setting materiality. These things itself, these 4 keywords will bring you around 6 or 7 points. So if you get such kind of question in your examination, just remember that yeah, you have to write down 10-15 points. Be reasonable, be logical, right? And also explain why you are considering that condition or that point, right? So that is all about this essay. We have covered the entire planning essay, right? And you have also been able to understand the importance of planning. It was a very small essay, right? We don't generally have direct questions from this essay, but the next essay that we will be covering up, essay 315, will be very important for you. Like you generally have a question from essay 315 in your examination, at least in alternate attempts. So that will be the most important essay, and that is a lengthy essay. We will take a couple of lectures on that, so please stay tuned until that, right? And when you're sitting, if you have missed out your pen and paper or anything where you are preparing your hand notes, please don't forget to miss it out when we are discussing the essay 315, right? So that will be all for the day. Stay tuned for what is coming up. Until then, this is Abhinay Gupta signing off. Thank you. Bye bye.